What's happening in Israel right now is the kind of meltdown you'd expect when a corrupt, war-hungry regime finally starts paying the price for its crimes. We're talking about a massive exodus of settlers, and not just a trickle. I'm talking Ben Gurion Airport overcrowded with people desperate to get out. Some are fleeing to Cyprus, others back to their home countries, because the so-called promised land is looking more like a financial graveyard. Billions are evaporating, investments are vanishing, and the war-torn apartheid state just isn't worth sticking around for anymore. And get this, in pure desperation, war criminal Bezalel Smotrich is trying to breathe life into the dead E1 settlement scheme in the West Bank, thinking it'll boost settler morale. Spoiler alert, it's not working. Every time they try to dress up their crimes as legitimate, the world pushes back harder against Netanyahu and his gang of occupiers.
I mean, targeting journalists is a war crime, so of course they say that we do not target journalists. But I think the numbers tell a slightly different story, don't they? We've had a huge number of journalists and media workers killed since the war began in Gaza, more than in any other conflict in that period of time. The Committee to Protect Journalists says it's about 184. The numbers are slightly different wherever you look, but it is a huge number. And you heard there from the spokesperson, he said that they have evidence that Anas al-Sharif was on a payroll for Hamas. They have not provided that evidence. They have provided some evidence that is difficult to verify, which doesn't prove that he was in any way still engaged or engaged currently in active hostilities for Hamas, which would have made him a legitimate target, rather that he may supposedly have joined in 2013, and there are pictures of a telephone number on a Hamas list, all on documents which are unverifiable. And the IDF says that the intelligence is too sensitive to share with us. And if it is the case that Anas al-Sharif was a terrorist, which they haven't proven, the burden of proof is quite high to have targeted him, what about the rest who were killed in that strike, who were also journalists? So I think there are still many questions to be asked. The IDF says we don't justify every strike on every Hamas terrorist that we take out. But we have seen this kind of pattern in their targeting before, where they've targeted a supposed Hamas terrorist and the entire family of that person is killed also. And this seems to be a case, the case in terms of targeting that tent and killing all of the journalists alongside Anas al-Sharif.
And here's the real punch to Netanyahu's gut. Norway's $2 trillion sovereign wealth fund, the biggest in the world, just said, nah, we're done. They're selling off stakes in Israeli companies, cutting contracts with Israeli asset managers, and completely divesting from the occupation state over what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank. That's not just a financial slap, that's a knockout punch. And honestly, if you listen to the journalists in Gaza describing the nightmare on the ground, it's obvious why this fund is finally pulling the plug. But, hey, before I roll that clip for you, smash that like button to help us beat Netanyahu's online troll army. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so more people can see the truth. God bless you.
Well, 75% of Gaza Strip has been freed as per Netanyahu. It has been occupied and the people were killed. We're talking about nearly 2,100 Palestinians who were killed already since October 7. So talking about it as if he's taking over an empty land, he's trying to manipulate the word to see that this is, just a piece of land without people. And the people there were, they moved maybe because there was a tsunami or there was an earthquake. This crazy man is now using God as a game for him. Like, this is a generational, historical, God has promised us this land. Well, this is a big lie, and he's trying to give it a kind of sacred cover, because the world is seeing what Israel is and is trying to understand what the Nakba was, because what we are living now is a duplica of the Nakba. when our grandparents were killed, when they were, put into starvation, and they were kicked out of their land. This is what's happening with the Gazans. And Netanyahu now wants to feel like he is doing something great, because many Jews around the world are refuting what he's doing and are saying, this is not the Israel we want, or this is not what represents us as Jews.
Now here's where it stings for Netanyahu. This fund had money in Israeli Sheamesh Engines holdings, a company making parts for fighter jet engines. Those same jets bombing Gaza? Yeah, that investment is now gone, and that's a major blow to the war machine. And the punishment doesn't stop there. Even Dutch leaders are gearing up for their own round of financial pain aimed straight at Netanyahu.
Oh, I think what's happening in Gaza is utterly appalling. I think Netanyahu has gone way too far. I think he has lost the plot, and I think that what we're seeing overnight, the attack on Gaza City, is utterly unacceptable, and that's what we have been calling for as an international community now for a long period of time. He is not listening to the international community, and that is unacceptable.
Saying that he's lost the plot, that's some of the strongest language that you've used. What's prompting that now?
Well, I've been consistent in the language to say, we are in the situation we're observing is utterly appalling. Utterly appalling. It is driving more human catastrophe across Gaza. We have called as a community, we've worked together with other like-minded countries. We are a small country, a long way away, with very limited trade with Israel. We have very little connection with the country. But we have stood up for values, and we keep articulating them very consistently. And what you have seen is Israel not listening to the global community at all. We have asked for humanitarian assistance to be delivered unfettered. It hasn't happened. We have said a forcible displacement of people and an annexation of Gaza would be a breach of international law.
Meanwhile, Israel's own numbers are screaming crisis. The Bank of Israel admits the Gaza war has drained over 250 billion shekels from the public purse, jacking the budget deficit to around 5% of GDP, and that's not something you just fix in a few months. Growth? Down to a miserable 0.9% in 2024, way below normal. Moody's has already downgraded them to Bar 1, warning things are about to get worse, with debt climbing towards 70% of GDP. And here's the wild part. Netanyahu, in the middle of all this, basically admitted the Greater Israel project is real.
מה אנחנו עושים כאן? אנחנו כאן בשליחות של דורות. יש דורות של יהודים שחלמו שנגיע לכאן, ויש דורות של יהודים שיבואו אחרינו. אז אתה שואל אם אני מרגיש שאני בשליחות היסטורית ורוחנית, התשובה היא כן.
אני לא רוצה לסבך אותך לסיום עם תיק 6000. אבל...
מה זה?
זה הוויז'ן שלי, זה אחד הדברים שחלמתי עליהם, מפת הארץ המובטחת.
יפה.
הגיע הזמן, קוראים לזה ירושלם. אני לא נותן את זה לך, אני מעניק את זה לך כדי שתיתן את זה לרעתך שרה.
תודה רבה.
אתה מתחבר לחזון?
מאוד.
באמת?
מאוד.
בישראל השלמה.
So, they're broke, hated internationally, and still doubling down on expansionist fantasies. On top of that, inflation is still too high, defense spending has ballooned by another 42 billion shekels, and the labor market is falling apart because of reservist call-ups and the lack of Palestinian and foreign workers. Even the OECD is saying the war is choking investment and exports, meaning any so-called recovery is nothing but smoke and mirrors. And the world's not buying it anymore. Just this week, the EU, Britain and Japan, along with 24 foreign ministers from countries like Canada and Australia, called for urgent action to stop the famine in Gaza. Their statement was brutal. The humanitarian suffering in Gaza has reached unimaginable levels. Famine is unfolding before our eyes. They demanded that Israel allow all international NGO aid shipments and stop blocking humanitarian work. 17 EU nations signed this, including heavyweights like France and the Netherlands, plus outspoken critics like Spain and Ireland. The EU even struck a deal with Israel last month to increase aid access, but, surprise, surprise, it's barely been implemented. Meanwhile, UN experts are warning Gaza is already tipping into famine, and aid groups have been accusing Israel for months of deliberately restricting food and medicine. This is the picture, folks. A collapsing economy, investors fleeing, allies turning their backs, and a world finally calling out the lies. Netanyahu's empire isn't just cracking, it's crumbling, and no amount of propaganda can glue it back together.